Hey guys, welcome back to a new episode of Calculated Chaos. Today I'm here with Mr. Conor O'Keefe. Conor, how are you keeping?
Good, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much for coming on this morning, on this slightly gloomy Saturday morning. um, so, do you want to give a quick introduction to someone who hasn't met you before?
I suppose I'm a ultra marathon runner and kind of mental well-being advocate from Cork. So an ultra marathon runner is basically anything that's over a marathon in distance is an ultra marathon. So a marathon distance is 26.2 miles or 42.2 kilometers, and the runs that I kind of like to do, the race that I like to do, are 100 miles, 162 kilometers, or 200 miles, 324 kilometers.
Okay, so I suppose let's kind of go back to the start because obviously, to anyone who even thinks a marathon is a crazy accomplishment, that would be like a lifelong goal for them. You went and just kind of blew that out of the water altogether. Where did it start? What was your athletic background as a younger person, or were you into running?
That's a good question. I started off like every kid, just trying fucking everything,
Yeah.
every single thing that kind of came my way. I was like, I want to do that. I want to do that. And that's kind of like how every kind of kid starts out their kind of sporting career is, unless they have a parent that's like, you're playing football,
Yeah.
then they'll try out everything, So I tried out taekwondo as a kid. I did swimming as a kid. I did rugby as a kid because I started to gain an awful lot of weight as a young fella, as some young fellas do. Like, you
Yeah.
pile on a couple of pounds there, like, before puberty. And I was just a big guy. So I was like, "Do you know what? I'll give rugby an old bash because that's where the big lads go." And then I went to school then into an actual rugby playing secondary school, and I found out that I was only strictly average at rugby
Right.
because all the other lads were just athletically they were ahead in terms of like their in terms of how far along they had gone puberty and all that. And I was like, maybe I have to rethink this a bit. So I ended up losing a load of weight when I was in school just because, like, I was just sick of being the fat kid, really, like, and just wanted to kind of change things up a bit. And when I did that in a roundabout way, I kind of got into mountaineering, and I ended up climbing Mount Kilimanjaro when I was 17.
Wow.
And I climbed Kilimanjaro, and when I came back from that, it was the weirdest sensation ever. It was the first time that I think I really felt like I was actually depressed. It sounds so strange, like to think about it in that way. But when I came back from Kilimanjaro, I was like, I'm after losing all this weight. I'm like, this new person, and I'm after conquering Africa, getting to the highest point of Africa. I should feel unreal. And when I got back to the kind of normality of like the leaving cert
Yeah.
preparations, it was kind of a hard thing to take. So it kind of kept me looking. And then I finally came across Siam Warriors Muay Thai kickboxing gym. And I became a Thai boxer. And it kind of consumed my life then from when I was in my teenage years all the way into my kind of early to mid 20s.
Wow. Okay. And so let's say with regards to your weight loss journey, because a lot of teenagers don't do it correctly. They end up starving themselves and under eating. Did you do it in a very drastic manner, or did you do it kind of in a kind of a controlled way, or what way did you go about it?
I was typically dogmatic.
Okay.
I was in the gym every single day, had no idea what I was doing, only that I was, working out,
Mm.
and probably caused more harm than actually, what good it did me. Um, Dieting, I don't think I did it like as hard as some people do it these days because I just didn't have the knowledge, really, to be honest with you, Dara. Like,
Yeah.
I just didn't know what to eat. Like when I was Thai boxing, and if I wanted to lose weight for a weigh-in for a fight, I know now that what I have to do. Like if I want to cut proper weight, I cut my water weight and all these kind
Yeah.
of things, or whatever. So I didn't know all that back then. So I was just kind of like eating healthily, like
Mm.
whatever healthily means to a 16-year-old lad, so I just changed up my diet, stopped eating as much rubbish as I was eating because I used to eat a lot of rubbish, like a lot of crappy foods, no, I wasn't. I don't think I was as bad as I suppose some people do know with the knowledge they have these days.
Yeah. And then with Kilimanjaro, obviously at 17, that's a big undertaking for someone at that age. What kind of, obviously you said you kind of fell into a bit of a depression afterwards, but like, was there any, in hindsight, 2020 looking back, was there any huge takeaways you kind of took from that Kilimanjaro trip? Because that sounds life changing as a young person.
Absolutely. There was a load of takeaways. Like I feel like just because I felt so down when I came back, that it didn't really take away from the experience, really, you know. If anything, what was causing me to be depressed was I was after having such a such an experience, you know, outside of the normality of everyday life, that certain things that were important to me just weren't important to me anymore. You know, it was like I had seen how the other side of the world lives, and I also saw, you know, the expanse of the world as well, and that it wasn't just, you know, Cork City. You
Of
know, it
course.
wasn't just Cork, and that was that was actually hard for me to process as a 17-year-old. I think you know, I always thought on a kind of a higher plane of thinking. Even from a young age, like, you know, I'd always question my teachers when I was 8, 9 years old, you know, how, you know, why they were in charge and why I had to do what they said and all of these things. You know, I'd always question things on a different level. And, you know, when I got back from Kilimanjaro, I was kind of like, I just didn't know if things meant as much to me, you know, things that should have you know, meant something to me, like, you know, jobs and job titles and, you know, getting the right course and leaving cert and all of these
Yeah.
things. It didn't necessarily, you know, feed into my life, you know. And I feel like I got, I was like, that was the, I suppose, the cultural aspect of what I took from Kilimanjaro or that trip. But the physical aspect of it, I don't think I even realized until I actually like got into college. When I got into college, I realized that like I had an ability. Like when I got into college and I started to really, really box like on a serious level, like when I was, you know, in the top of the country at it, I really, you know, knew that I had started my foundation of this kind of willingness to persist, even when I was like absolutely fucking shag tired. And the last thing that I wanted to do was just get out into the car and drive over to training and go run in the rain and spar with lads that were bigger and stronger than I was and do all of these things, because where it kind of started from was on my last night in Kilimanjaro, my last night, the last climb. Anybody that's done Kilimanjaro, it's not, you know, life-changingly difficult, but the last night's climb is a test. You know, it is a test. You've been on the mountain for about 3.5 days. You're at about 5,500 meters, and you're gonna push to just under 6,000 meters that day, and you start in the middle of the night, and it's absolutely freezing cold. And at 17, I had never experienced anything like this. The cold, the fatigue I had, the altitude sickness that I had never experienced anything like that before. So when I actually got there, I think that there was a kind of a crossroads almost. When I was halfway up, I was sitting down on a rock and I was actually getting sick blood, and I was really, really not having a good time. My hands had frozen to my walking poles. You know, I was a bit ill-equipped, like physically and in terms of my gear. And my the tour guide, the guide that was guiding us up the mountain with the charity, Graham was his name. He was a former Royal Marines commando, like UK Special Forces, and he kind of got down. He was very, very soft-spoken guy. He had one glass eye as well. He was very kind of like, you know, very intimidating looking figure, but he kind of said to me in a very matter-of-fact way, you know, if you don't get up and start walking, Conor, you know, I'm going to have to take you off the mountain and your climb is done. And, you know, you're finished. And right then and there, I just got up off the side of the rock and just started putting one foot in front of the other until I got to the top. And when I got to the top, just washed over with euphoria. But it was kind of, regardless of how it ended and how I, you know, whether I got to the top or not, it was like I had been asked, my mind had been asked the question, how kind of bad do you want to do it, really? Like, you know, for want of being like cliche about it, how bad do you want to finish it? You know, you've come all the way over here. You took a 9.5 hour, 10 hour flight into Kenya. You took an 11.5 hour bumpy bus through into Tanzania. and you unpacked all your stuff, and you've made it all the way up here. You've been on the mountain for 3.5 days. Do you want to finish it, or do you want to go home? And you make that decision there, and it was just like that when I was in college. And I actually dropped out of college in my final year of college for about 3.5 months. And there was about a month and a half, 2 months left until the exams. And I decided, you know what, I'll just go back. And it was the same mechanism that I applied on Kilimanjaro. It was like, how bad do you want to finish and get your law degree and, have that as, part of the building block of your life. And so I just put in 14-hour days during college, studying every single day, getting up at the crack of dawn, going to bed when it's blackout, and every single day doing those days. But it started from Thai boxing, and it started from Kilimanjaro, and it was nurtured in Thai boxing, and then I didn't even really touch base with it until I got into running.
Wow. And just one other thing I want to touch on with Kilimanjaro, just as a younger person, because I think in the last few years there's been a lot of talk of kind of making sports for kids non-competitive, not keeping score, not keeping track, kind of letting them participate. But clearly there was always something inside of you that kind of said you always had that extra level of mental, which people don't really talk a lot about in physical sports, I find. Do you think that if you hadn't been pushed as a minor with regard to sports, that maybe that would have actually hampered that? Or do you think that competitive sport, like people or kids at a younger age, should be let to be competitive and keep track of scores so that they push themselves that extra bit further, and the people that do put the hours in do excel at the sports?
I think that the argument for competitive sports is far more has a lot more weight than making sports non-competitive, because sport means something different to every single person, and I feel like certain people will be completely ambivalent to it, and they'll just sport is sport, I'll watch the footy on the Sunday or whatever the case may be, and that's that. And some people, sport is their lives, and sport is just like, it gives them some sort of a compass in which to kind of navigate through their lives, and I know people on both ends of that spectrum. I feel that where kids are concerned, and where it's like small kids and things like that, they have to be taught, and not just in a throwaway manner, they have to be taught about the implications of sport and of competing. There's a winner, there's a loser, Just because you lose today doesn't mean that you're going to lose every single day. Just because you win today doesn't mean that you have the right to lord that over the person you beat. And all of these things, those are lessons that are kind of taught to us, Daragh, to be honest, like later on in life, you know what I mean? Where we just learn these things through experience, and, through looking at how other people act, and maybe looking how, sports people, adult sports people act, and things like that. And that's why it's so, that's why when people talk about sports people as role models, I really do believe they are role models, because you're, as an 8 or 9-year-old kid, let's say you're a Man United fan. They're getting rarer and rarer by the day. Let's say you're a Man United fan, and you're looking at Rashford, and he gives the finger to the ref.
Yeah.
That's the type of thing that you're going to put out into the world, that's okay to act like that. Whereas I suppose it's our responsibility as parents and teachers and things like that to tell kids about the aspects behind competitive sport, not just this is competitive or this is not competitive. We should teach them about, because I suppose it's a microcosm of life. You're competing in life all the time. You're competing in life for the right girlfriend or the job or whatever the case be. You're always competing with other people. It's not going to go away. If you go and hide under a rock, it's not going to go away. You're going to face it in other arenas. You know what I mean? Just because you get rid of it in sport doesn't mean it's gone from life. So I feel like competitive sport, I would say that the argument for having competitive sport is stronger than not having competitive sport. But it has to be structured and taught, and it has to be, like, kids are amazing because they're such sponges of information. But if they're not given the right information, they can't learn properly.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And then I suppose you said you fell into a bit of a depression during Leaving Cert, but clearly saying you went and did law in college means that you still got good points at the end of your Leaving Cert. How was that battle? Because I feel like a lot of people do really fight with that during leaving cert, with their mental health, physical health, and then trying to ultimately do this big exam at the end and perform at their very best, even though under high stress. So how did you kind of balance that?
Oh man, like I was the biggest class clown in the entire world. I'm fairly sure I'm up there with like probably have a record for getting suspended. I think I got suspended in the teens like 14 times or something. Like I was a terrible do you know what? I was like I had a chip on my shoulder, I think, you know, when I got into school. I was like, my father's a soldier, you know, and my father like would have been an authoritarian, like an authoritative figure in the household, you know, and maybe I just didn't want to have that in school. So when I went into school, I was butting heads with teachers all the time, and I didn't actually really cop that. When I also came back from Kilimanjaro, I saw these kids. They had passed a law in Tanzania that if you wanted to attend school, you had to wear a uniform. And some families would have 3 kids with 1 uniform. So they'd each get like a specific day that they could go to school. So they do it in 3-day rotations or whatever. And when I got back, I just had this new vigor for education. No teacher had ever tried, not necessarily that they had tried and I had not taken it in. No one had tried to actually develop in my young mind the actual the importance of education, you know. And like I had been told a million times, oh, it's so important to get an education. If someone actually sat me down even 1 hour every fortnight or month and actually talked me through about, you know, what education should mean to you and how important it actually is, I feel like I would have had a lot easier time during school. Then again, I might not have. I might have just been an absolute bollocks again still, like, you know. But
Yeah.
so what I discovered was when I got back from Kilimanjaro was I had 1 year left in school. I was just going into 6th year, and I gave it everything, but it didn't. I fell short of where I wanted to be, so I actually had to repeat my leaving cert. So I repeated my leaving cert the next year after I repeated it, and I got the points that I wanted. Well, I actually got the points for occupational therapy, and I ended up getting my second choice, which was law, because the occupational therapy was like 505 points. I got 505 points, and then it like went up by 15 points or something like that, and I couldn't get in. So I just basically fell into law, man, just absolutely out of nowhere, really. And I was like, Jesus, you know, we'll give it a lash, you know, and we'll see what the story is, you know. So I just gave it a lash and continued to give it a lash for however many years and finished out with the degree, and that was it, really.
Okay. And then did you feel then when you got the degree, so are you currently practicing a lawyer or no?
No, I finished up. Like that's another thing that I learned about when I finished up my law degree was how little people go on to actually practice law when they have a law degree. Yeah, I think there was about 10% of my class went on to get their FE1 exams, to get their exams to become a litigator, like, you know. Some people fell into different aspects of law, like taxation law and things like that, but the business world and the world of marketing swallowed up a lot of my class.
Okay, makes sense. And then I suppose so you're saying you're doing Muay Thai and you're getting boxing to a high level kind of during your late teens, early 20s when you were in college. Then when did running come on the scene? Because obviously for cutting weight and training Muay Thai and boxing, obviously cardio is a huge part of that, and doing your road miles is so important. It's a huge part of that culture. When did running kind of maybe stand out to you, or when did it distinguish itself from the Muay Thai and the boxing?
When I was boxing, like, you know, I was quite slight. I was like slighter than I am now, like, you know, and I'm quite thin now. Well, not very, very thin, but, you know, like I used to be very, very slight and kind of gangly. And I was always kind of like when we used to head out, leave the gym, and we do like our 6 kilometer run around the city, like nearly every day. I used to always kind of like finish first, and I'd always be kind of like head of the pack, and I always felt like Joe running was kind of naturally came to me, like, you know. I was just I just had the body for it. I don't know where it came from. Wasn't always the way, when I was a fat kid in school, Jesus Christ, I hated running. It was the worst thing ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if I heard that there was a bleep test, like I would be like, I'm actually sick. I actually can't do this. So it was just completely shirking responsibility. But running came out of, I suppose, the quenching of the fire of like boxing. You know, I like when boxing kind of came to this situation where I could get into it if you wanted me to get into it, like about how Thai boxing kind of came to an end for me.
Go for it.
Basically in I was once I started in 2008, I was like, all I wanted to do was fight for an Irish title. You know, that's all I wanted. When I first day I came in, I was like, that's it. This is my sport. Like, there's nothing else. I'm never doing anything else. I'm never going on a rugby pitch again. I'm never like doing normal British boxing. I'm never doing anything. It's just Thai boxing, and I just fell in love with it. And then that love affair turned into kind of obsession. And for the next 5 years, I just trained and fought everybody that I could in the country, and finally got an opportunity in 2013. Then, while I was actually still in college, to fight for an Irish title, and I ended up getting the fight that I really wanted as well, because this guy was the best guy in the country, and if I beat him, I'd have been the best guy in the country, and I was just incredibly excited about the whole thing. The fight night came, and we fought ridiculously hard. It was a tremendous fight, and the last minute of the last round, I got knocked unconscious. I got hit with a left hook, and I got knocked unconscious, and I was just so emotionally, physically, mentally devastated. After that loss, I feel like my love of Thai boxing basically really started to trickle out of my mind and my body. Then I wasn't set up for it. I didn't have the resilience. You know, I had resilience in terms of pushing myself, but I just didn't have that resilience in terms of taking that failure, taking that setback. You know, and I've come to the point in my life now where I'm looking for areas in which to fail, and looking for areas in which I can, you know, push to that limit where I don't finish, or I'm not able to complete it. But right there, I wasn't mentally capable of it. And I went on to fight some more for the next kind of year and a half, 2 years, and won some, lost some, but just didn't have that love anymore. It was like I was fighting for the survival of my love for Thai boxing. You know, I was like, I was trying to so bad to just be where I was when I was that, like, you know, that 17-year-old kid that walked into the gym and just got hit with this smell of like sweat and hard work, and all the lads hitting the pads and slapping the leather pads and things like that. And I couldn't find it anymore, you know. And after I'd finished Thai boxing, it had given me such, as I said earlier, given me such a compass of my life, of where my life was going to go, and like structured it. Like, to be honest with you, it took over my life so much. I didn't go on a leave insert holiday. I didn't go to, you know, out on college nights out, or freshers week, or rag week, or, you know, college balls, anything like that, because it just didn't fit in with what I wanted. Wow. And I had such a drive in me to just be the best boxer that I could, that I just skipped out on an awful lot of that aspect of life. And then after I finished Thai boxing, I was like, we could do all of these things now. You know, we can do all these things. We can go out and get smashed, and go out and try and chase girls, and, you know, do all these things that other people do. And so I did that basically for a couple of years. And that was kind of one of those points in time in my life where I was like, I had this freedom that I had kind of been longing for so long. But then when I got it, I realized that it was just a load of shite. That, you know, I realized that, like, you know, this way of life just wasn't for me. You know, I don't think my mind was built for that. Although I gave a good lash at it, like, you know, you know. So like you know, in Ireland, it's very, very easy to get caught up in that culture, because there's always company for you. You know, there's always one of your friends that's willing to go out, and, you know, there's always something. And I did that for a good long while, and then I felt like, you know, I was in this hamster wheel of, like, you know, I had gotten a job out of college. I was earning a lot of money, way more money than I thought I was going to earn at 24 years of age. And I ended up giving half of it to the barman and the other half into like clothing shops in town and things like that, just buying stuff that I thought was really important. I had lost the sight of all the lessons I had learned as a teenager. I hadn't, fostered that I suppose that gratitude that I had when I first came back from Kilimanjaro and those years afterwards. And I just kind of was spiraling, man. I was just spiraling kind of, on this kind of didn't know where I was going kind of thing. So I just said, you know what, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to move abroad. So I moved to Canada, just like a lot of people do. You get to that kind of point where you're like, you look for the simplest solution to a problem. And the simplest solution to me was, I'm having this bad time in Cork where I'm just living the same thing every single week and I'm not getting anywhere and I'm not enjoying it and I'm feeling terrible. I'm depressed all the time. I'll move out of Cork and then it'll be different.
Yeah.
It's absolute bullshit. You're just like, you're pandering to yourself. You know what I mean? It's when I landed in Canada, I just lived my Cork life in Canada. Except this time I smoked an awful lot more weed because it was legal over there. And I just got into this way of life where I was like living like this transient, I was just living like this transient, what do they call them? Like drifter almost type job. Whereas like, I was just working this job, laying turf actually, like on golf courses and in like people's back gardens and things like that. And then just drinking all the money I could. And it was just kind of one of those times where you're like, this will teach me lessons. Like, I knew it was going to teach me lessons, and it has. It has taught me lessons, but it didn't supply what I was looking for. When I left to go to Canada, I was like, this was like, I was like this, Italian peasant where I was like getting on the boat to Ellis Island and, getting over to New York into this big land of opportunity. And then I ended up just smoking and drinking myself into every single day. So I was just, I when I was over there, then I got this kind of urge. I got revenue. The revenue gave me a big payout in tax. I had been overtaxed for about 3 years, and they gave me a couple of grand. And I was like, you know what I'm going to do now? I'm going to reignite this Thai boxing flame, and I'm going to go back, and I'm going to move to Thailand, and I'm going to live in Thailand, and I'm going to fight and train in the Thai boxing gym. And that's exactly what I did. And I stopped off at home on the way. I got a call from my doctor, and the doctor said, "Oh, Conor, remember we did a scan on your brain there before you went off to Canada?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, geez, I forgot about that." Yeah, well, we got something there we need to talk to you about. And then I, as it turns out, I actually had a benign cyst in my brain. It was like, like there's a few different layers of kind of different liquids and barriers within your actual like brain, between your brain and your skull. And one part had kind of basically leaked into another part. It wasn't actually very, something to be concerned about really, only that they said, don't Thai box because, we don't have a clue what'll happen if you get another concussion. So I went to Thailand anyway because I was a young fella and I was headstrong and I was stubborn and I felt like I knew better. And I felt like, to be honest with you, I was clutching at this, getting back to this life that I had before. And so I went over there. I fought 2 times. I won the first one and I lost the second one. And I really just feared for my brain so much that I just had to go. And then when I got back to Ireland, I stopped off in Vietnam and gave it a good go at drinking myself to half the debt over in Vietnam as well. And got back over to Ireland penniless, with no kind of direction on which, where I wanted to go, and fell back into the same thing, got the same job with the same place, and started earning money and just forgot completely about the ideals that I had or I wanted to figure out. And kind of came to that point where I was like, Jesus Christ, all I want to be is an athlete again. I just want to be an athlete again. And I was just searching for this, this something that was going to come about and like get me back onto the athletic kind of way of life. And I just said, well, you know what? In running, people don't really try and punch you in the head too often. So maybe we'll just go running. And I just started running and I said, do you know what, I'll run my first marathon. And I booked my first marathon, Cork City Marathon. And I did that, half drank, half trained myself to the start line. Once I finished the marathon itself, I was like, oh Jesus, I was crying and everything. My dad was there and I was like, oh, I'm about to do my first marathon and all this kind of crap. And went out, got absolutely stocious then that night, got absolutely plastered, and woke up the next morning, all of the kind of, I suppose, the achievement that I had of the marathon was long gone, and I was just like left again, like wondering, fuck it, I'm back in the same boat. Like, I'm half-assing these things, and I don't half-ass stuff. And I was half-assing this running. I was half-assing everything I was doing.
Yeah.
And I came across a guy. Do you know a guy called David Goggins? He's on
David Goggins. Yeah.
I came across his interview, his podcast with Joe Rogan, and I said to myself, like, obviously, like, he's a very, he's an incredibly tough individual, inspirational guy, like, but and all of the achievements that he had collected over the years, I was like, this is impressive. But what's really impressing me is how honest he is about all the times where he didn't give a shit and where he made bad decisions. He took the get out of jail free card. He took the easy way out. And I thought to myself, that's what I've done a million times over, and I felt like that there was some sort of a, like I could have this personal renaissance, I could have this rebirth, you know what I mean? And so I was sitting down. This is actually how I became an ultra runner, and this is actually like the most, like, people don't believe me when I say it because it's so stupid, right? I was sitting down at lunch with a buddy of mine, and I said, he also had seen the Joe Rogan podcast with David Goggins. We were both just enamored with the guy, and we were just talking away, and I was like, Mark, we should run 100-mile run, man. See if there's 100-mile run on in Ireland, and we'll do it, like. And I think Mark, my buddy, who's he is an ultra marathon runner. He's run a good few ultra marathons as well now, since, like, he hadn't even run a marathon. And he looked up on his phone. I think he thought, like, maybe I thought, sometime next year, at that point. And he was like, yeah, there's one here in Connemara. It's in 6 weeks. And I was like, yeah, book it. We're doing it. And 6 weeks later, we were up in Connemara at the Connemara 100-mile ultramarathon.
No way.
That was it. Like, that was actually how it happened. We like, I was about 2 stone heavier than I am now. I was, like, completely, I had really, really hurt myself doing the marathon. Like, I thought, you know what? It'll be grand. I've ran a marathon. It's only 4 times that, and I've 30 hours to do it. Be grand. What's the worst that could fucking happen? The worst happened anyway. Basically, we showed up at this race, and we were like, I can't actually understate how little business we had being at this race. Like, the neck of us that we thought that we'd be able to do a 100-mile run, and all of these, like, diligently trained ultra marathon runners, like, showing absolute, commitment to their craft, just looking upon 2 of us going, these fucking city boys from Cork, like, are just going to get their ass handed to them, like, by this countryside, like, you know what I mean? And they were kind of right, to be honest. They were kind of fucking dead right, because we got to, like, mile 55, and I always say this to people when I'm doing my talks with companies or whatever the case may be. You'll have your mile 55 at some point in time in your life. It might not be on a run. It might not even be anything to do with sport, but you have your mile 55. And I've had my mile 55. I had a I suppose, version of mile 55 when I had that chat with Graham near the top of Kilimanjaro, where you have to decide how bad you actually want it, how bad you actually want to finish something, and how bad you actually want to see through the conviction you had the first day you thought about it. And that's the thing that I always say to people. Remember the first day you thought about doing something class. You thought about doing something unbelievable. Let's say now you're sitting there with your mate and you go, John, we should rent a car and go do the Trans-Siberian fucking highway or whatever the case be, and drive that and experience all of those different cultures and countries and all these type of things. And then it kind of goes, yeah, we should. And then a week or two passes, and I said, do you remember that? Actually, we said that about going to do this thing. I go, yeah, we should do that. And then it fades and fades and fades. And then you finally get to that chance, let's say 2 years later or whatever the case may be, and you and your friend are on this highway, and then you have your car and a tire fucking blows up or something like that happens. That's kind of giving you this signal to turn back and go home and not finish out what you started. Think back to that first day when you were sitting down in that cafe and wherever you were, and you thought about that time that you wanted to do this, and the conviction and the vigor that was inside in your mind. I thought about that when I was at mile 55. My body was absolutely broken in half. I could barely move. I was sitting down at the edge of my car, and I could barely move. I was eating a Supermax actually, which was strange. I was in Galway. It's kind of rite of passage. And I was eating the Supermax, and I was like, yeah, boys, I'm kind of dead. Like, I'm destroyed. And I've 45 miles to go, and it's getting dark, and I was like, I'm not coming up here. Like, I'm not, it's the same story. I'm not flying all the way over to Africa to come 300 meters short. I'm not coming all the way up to Connemara after telling all my friends and all of everybody, I'm going to go up and I'm going to run this 100-mile race. But it had actually nothing to do with any of them at the time. It had nothing to do with how any of them felt. Because just as I had thought about fighting, when I'm in the ring, that's me, and that's not for anybody else. And nobody can, even if I get knocked unconscious or I get my hand raised at the end of this, nobody's going to be able to take it away from me, because I'm the man in the arena. I'm the guy who's in doing these things. So at mile 55, I just decided, yeah, we're just going to put one foot in front of the other, and that's the only way. And me and Mark talked to each other. We had to separate because I actually wasn't even able to run anymore. I had to walk 45 miles, which is horrific. I'd never wish it upon anybody. And I was talking to Mark, and I said, Mark, like, this is what we talked about, man. Like, it's one foot in front of the other, and time. Those are the two things that are going to get you across the line, is time and putting one foot in front of the other in that time. And that's what I did, and I finished it in 28 hours. I was 2 hours shy of the cutoff point, and yeah, it's still to this day the most pain I've ever been in, I'd say. I was in an unimaginable pain, and I wouldn't even want anybody to feel it for like a second. And you're talking about the background I had now in Thai boxing, where you're getting elbows slapped across your face, you're getting legs, your legs are getting chopped off, you're going shin to shin bone, as hard as you can sometimes, and I still hadn't a comparable pain to describe to people how I was in. Everything hurt, as in parts of me that I never. My hair hurt because I was wearing a hat, and I had I had my hat on my head, and whatever way it was rubbing, my hair actually hurt. Everything, every inch of me. And then to be honest with you, I kind of completely fell off from running. After that, I was so badly injured after it that it took me a long time to even be able to run even 100 meters with no pain.
Jesus. And then what made you go back to it again after all that, after that ordeal, after walking 45 miles in unimaginable pain? What made you go back?
The timeline for people, that was August 2018, right? And
not long ago.
Yeah, no, it's not that long ago, you know what I mean? And just thinking about all the things that I've done in between, it's been madness, and I really completely and utterly, it was like a rerun of the marathon. It was this was supposed to give me something that I could grab onto, that I could hold on to, you know what I mean? And in that period, that was August 2018, and from the 10th of August when I finished up that race to the 31st of December, I think I actually hit one of the darkest periods in my life. I was drinking so much. I think I was just there was a subconscious part of me that was just I'm after running 100 miles, you know what I mean? I'm able to do whatever the fuck I want to do, and I didn't I didn't give two thoughts about it. Like, I just sat back, and it was just absolute complacency. Like, you know, I was sitting back on my laurels of, you know, I'm just after running this 100-mile race, like, you know what I mean? And that was it. And I ended up like drinking an awful lot in that period of time. And like, it's, you know, it's coming into winter time. It's, you know, it's like the weather is kind of, I suppose, not really conducive to getting out and running and doing all of these things that are tough and they're hard. So I completely fell off. And then I remember waking up on the 1st of January 2019, and I was just like, I've been underplaying it a lot in this talk, but like during those times, like I contemplated my own life number of times. I really wasn't in good mental places a lot of those times, and it kind of came to the point on the 1st of January where I was like, you know, I'm not going to see the 1st of January 2020 if I don't change my life, you know, if I don't get it on track. And I remember like thinking to myself, like, you know, all of the times that I had asked like the universe, I had asked the outside world to solve my problems for me, you know, and whether it be, you know, climbing Kilimanjaro, like to give me some semblance of like, you know, importance about myself, or, you know, getting my hand raised in a Thai boxing ring, or going off and running marathons, 100-mile runs. It was like, I had always been searching for something on the outside that was going to, you know, make me me, or it was going to give me some bit of self-worth. And I was like, why? You know, why do you want to keep going? Not how anymore. Not how are we going to, you know, how are we going to change? How are we going to get fit? How are we going to do these things? How are we going to run this race or whatever? I was asking myself, why? Like, you know, why do you want to keep going? If you're constantly thinking on one hand that you've got this, you've got something inside you that's worth sharing, and you've got something inside you that's like, that could do great things. And then there's the other side of you that is like, you know, doesn't give a shit and takes the easy way out and doesn't allow this side of you to stay very long. Why do you want to keep trying to find this guy, to keep trying to find the guy that can do great things, and the guy that can, you know, that can persevere and persist and be resilient? And I kind of set about answering that question, really. You know, I met with Mark, the same guy who had run the Connemara 100 with me. He actually finished before me, and he said to me, you know, he had since ran another 100-miler in Wicklow in December of that year, and I was like, you know, the way my mind was working back then was like, how fucking dare he? How dare he go off and run an ultramarathon and not tell me about it, you know, and not let me. I was like, I was the one who let him know about Connemara. And then I was like, right, that was the start really of that day. I like when I said that to myself, right, I remember talking to him. I met him outside work. We had since started working together. I met him outside work, and he was actually running. He was running home. And I stopped him, and he said, oh yeah, like, you know, I'm after signing up for a 200-mile run in the UK. And I was like, fucking hell. And I thought, and straight away I said, I'll do it with you. I'll do it, yeah. And like, he looked at me now, like, as in he was looking nearly through me. He was like, the skeptical look on his face was just, it's like I can replicate it right now in my mind's eye. And and he was dead right, because like I was after gaining a lot of weight since the 100-mile run. I was puffy faced from alcohol. My face was red and puffy from drinking so much in the last 3 months. I was not in a shape. I'd look like, you know, I didn't look like a guy who could fucking run out of the cinema, let alone run 200 miles. But I thought to myself then, when I left that conversation, I was like, he's after running this 100-mile race in Wicklow, and he didn't tell me about that. And now he's after signing up for this 200-mile run, and he's only telling me there now that he's going to run off this, and how dare he? And right then and there, man, I got into my car and I thought on the way home, and I was like, it's not his responsibility, man. It's not Mark's responsibility, you know, to fucking hold my hand and tell me about all of these things and tell me how to live and tell me, you know, that he's doing all these things. That's him living his own life. And that's exactly what you have to do from now on. from this actual moment, you have to take accountability and responsibility for your life. I was blaming my bosses and I was blaming my employer who was giving me money. I was blaming him for how disillusioned I was with my job and how unhappy I was in my position. And like, you know, I had a company car, I had a company phone, I had everything paid for. I was earning fucking thousands of euro a month. And I had the audacity to blame my boss who was giving me the job and giving me every opportunity to earn money. I was blaming him for the way I was feeling about it. And people will, if they listen to this podcast now, would kind of think, do you know what? I've actually been fucking blaming my boss for how fucking bad I feel about my job as well. And if there's anybody listening to this podcast right now, and I promise you, right, like I'm gonna spell out one thing. This is a kind of an offset of this is a soliloquy of the main drama that I'm talking about here, and it is absolutely improbable that you even exist right now. It's improbable, one, that life exists on this planet, right, in the first place. We are in this perfect round planet within this solar system that is just right for life. If there was anything different about planet Earth, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have water. We wouldn't have the chemical reactions that are necessary for life to happen if we were just a small bit different to where we are now. So that makes life in general improbable. And then out of the trillions upon trillions of chances for you to be conceived, you were conceived and you were brought into this world, right? And all of those possible people that could have been before or after you didn't get the opportunity to live their lives, right? So if you're in a job and you're working every single day of the week in this job that you fucking hate, life is too short and life is too precious and life is too improbable for you to be there anymore. And like, I understand people have families and they have this and that and the other thing. What I say to people is, if you are unhappy, at least think of ways and measures that you could take to change that up and even to change your perspective. You might not even need to quit your job, because I hear that all the time from people. Oh, quit your job and do this and do all that kind of stuff. Don't do that straight, you know what I mean? Because that's not how life really works. Like, how life works is you have to think about your actual life as an entirety. You can't just think about your job being one thing, your family being another. It's everything is encompassing. What I say to people is, you could even change your perspective. You could even change how you think about your job, and it will give you better satisfaction and it will give you better happiness. You don't even need to change job. But what I say to people is, it's absolutely, it's up to you. It's your responsibility. And I say this to people that want to get help with their mental health. It is your responsibility. Your mental health is your responsibility. The ability for you to seek help and the ability for you to gain resilience is your responsibility. And that's what I think people have a problem with sometimes, is they will take all of their entitlements, but they won't actually feel their responsibilities. And when I heard about this 200-mile race, and the first thing I was saying to myself was, that fucker, like, you know, coming off, you know, doing his fucking his ultra marathon in December and then going off and doing his 200-mile run and not saying a word to me. And like, then I thought, yeah, you're being absurd. You're being absurd. Like, you're talking like somebody who's just like, you know, like, I'm not capable of running my own life and taking care of my own life and taking care of myself. That's what I was saying in that moment. And as soon as I let go of the blame on everybody else, on anybody else, there was nobody that I could blame for anything in my life. Then I had such control and such freedom to do the things that I wanted to do. And when I thought about it, you know, I've got a 200-mile run to run, and like, I worked 6 days a week at the time, and I worked about 55 hours a week. And I was like, okay, I work 55 hours a week, 6 days a week. How am I going to train for this thing? It's like, oh, you're going to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, or you're going to get up at 4:30 in the morning. Because running is a time-intensive sport. It's a time, like ultra running, because you have to run for long periods of time. You have to run for many hours. So I said, yeah, like, that's your responsibility now. you're after taking on this challenge to run this 200-mile run. That's your responsibility. And when I took that on board, it was like one of the most freeing things I've ever experienced in my life. When I just took control of who I was, what I wanted to do, everything. I quit my job 3 months later. So that I could focus on this run. I had saved up enough money that I could just, that I was able to like live off of my savings, and that I was able to just, give it a whack. Like, it was just like, life's too short. Life's too improbable for me to give, for me to do something that I fucking hated, So, so yeah, then I went on to, and then obviously I trained for the 200 miles then for the next couple of months.
That's mad, absolutely mad. And then, how did that race go?
There was me and 5 other people, myself, Mark, and 4 other people that ran it, and I was actually the only one who finished. I was only the second person in the history of the race to actually finish within the 60-hour time limit.
Wow.
I was the first finisher since 2016. So like, it was a success, I suppose. Yeah, the run itself, like, is like, it's so strange because, like, it's over a year ago now, since I did it, and in that time I've ran so many different things and done so many different things since then. But what I really look back upon in that time was not like me finishing up a 200-mile race. It was like, I had the bravery to follow my own plan. And I had the bravery to follow my own race. There was a time when I was 22 miles behind everyone else. I was running my own race, and the way that I thought that I was going to be able to finish it, and I was so far behind that it could have been very, very easy for me to abandon this kind of preset plan that I had in my mind and just kind of go, okay, we need to catch up with these lads.
Yeah.
You fast forward then about 18 hours, and I'm on my own. There's nobody else left running. I'm 136 miles into it, and I'm the only one that's left. And
Wow.
I have 64 miles left in a 200-mile race, and there's nobody else then. There's no other. I could have stopped running, and I would have ran the most out of everybody. If I stopped 140 miles in, I would have ran more than anybody else, and I would have been the quote unquote kind of like the best finisher, or the best did DNF, the best did not finish of that year.
Yeah.
But I was like, that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to see how the last couple of months and how I have changed my mindset, how that's going to actually manifest itself. Because I say this to people all the time, I'm actually not really built for running, and I'm not like really, I wouldn't be your typical ultramarathon runner, and I'm not even a very fast runner either. Like, it's just, I literally had it in my mind that I knew how to talk to myself, and I knew how to finish, and I knew how to keep that in my mind at all times, even when shit got real at the end.
Yeah.
And I was really hurting. It was just, I was able to keep that in my mind, that I was able to keep going, and the race itself was madness. Like.
That's insane. I'm gonna have to wrap it up now in the next couple of minutes, just because due to time. But I'd love to ask the end, because I'd love to do a part 2 of this, because I definitely think, like you said, there's so much happened since that race, and I'd love to do a part 2 in the next couple of months. What advice would you give to someone who wants to get into, let's say, even marathon running or running in general, and even maybe the ultra marathon running? What would you advise, let's say, a teenager watching this now? What would you advise they start? Where would you advise they start?
Eat up as much information as you can, and that's what I always like, because I was saying to you at the start, like, I didn't have the information when I was 16, 17. It was like protein powder had kind of just come on the mainstream, you know what I mean? It just come on, I was just like, this is 11 years ago, and I was like 11, 12 years ago, oh Jesus, nearly 13 years ago now. And like, I'm just like, it's like I didn't have the info, man, and that got me injured, it got me hurt. It got me, sapped of all energy at times. What I say to people is, find the people that have the knowledge, right? But what the thing about the fitness industry especially, and anything to do with exercise these days, is you're going to get so many contradictory advice, so much contradictory advice. So what I'd say is, try and find the right source. So like people that run, like even me, and this is actually like, this is how I feel about it, is even me, what I say is what I do, is what works for me, not necessarily what's going to work for anyone else. So I say to people is, find yourself a good coach if you want to take it seriously. If you want to just run and you want to just get out and go for a run, what I'd say to people is, try and make it interesting. A lot of people go like, oh, I'm going to run there now, and then they do the same loop around their town every single day or every single time they do it. Make it interesting. Go out in the weekend there and fucking go off into some trail or something somewhere around the place. You're never too far from a trail in Ireland. And if you have a car or whatever the case may be, drive out somewhere, make it interesting. If you're a teenager, try and fucking get your brother or somebody else involved that can drive you out there, whatever the case may be, and do it together. Because when you run together, now, I like running on my own. That's just the way I am, or whatever the case may be. But I've often ran with people loads of times, and it's very, very, it's a good way to just have a chat, almost forget what you're doing, and just enjoy this kind of community. Enjoy the kind of community. So get involved with people, get people involved, and have some fun with it. Like, there's my advice is very, very vague in terms of running, because I feel like anybody can do it, anybody should do it. What I would say to people as well is, don't try and put the horse before the cart before the horse, because like people will be like, oh, I don't run at all, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to sign up for a marathon there in 4 months' time. Like, that sounds so rich coming from me, after this 6-week training block for a 100-mile run. But it will foster a better relationship with the sport if you actually give yourself the time and be patient and do the things properly. Like, it sounds so hypocritical, I know, but like it's one thing that I do say to people is, like, don't try and conquer the world in one day. Like, try and enjoy the process, enjoy the journey. Because I'm telling you, right, people will say, oh, I want to run a marathon, or I want to do this and that and the other thing. I promise you, and this is like one of the most important things I'll say about running is, when you come to the end of the marathon, right, and you finish that marathon, you'll actually realize that the most important time was the time you took to actually train for it. And that's the most important thing. You're running the marathon for 3, 4, 5 hours. Like, you're going to be training for weeks and months. So the ability for your body to assimilate, or your mind to assimilate the information it's getting from training, is going to be far, far easier and far better if you're talking about the time you actually take to train for it. When you finish it, it's going to be a great achievement, and it's going to be fantastic. Whether it be your first 10K, your first 10 miles, half marathon, whatever the case may be, the finish of that will be great. But what will really stand out to you is the person you were before you started training for this thing, in terms of both your mind and your body will change. You know what I mean? And if you really sit with that, and you really think through all the times where you couldn't have been arsed getting off the couch, but you did, and you laced up your runners and you went out for that run, all of those times you look back on, and those are the nuggets, those are the important times, not the crossing the line, getting the medal wrapped around your neck. That's not really that important. What's important is the times when nobody was watching you, you still got out and you still laced up your runners and still got out. And that's the thing that you will be able to foster in yourself.
That's amazing. Thank you very much for your time, Conor. I really, really do appreciate it. There's an amazing amount of knowledge in that. And to anyone who does any questions, feel free. I'll have all Conor's socials linked down below. But thank you very, very much for all your time. Appreciate it, and hope we get to talk to you soon. Thanks, mate. You have a good day.